I hope everybody is having a good day. This video is going to talk about some team building hacks that I hope will help during the inevitable realities where teams tend not to do what you want them to do, and that sort of drama occurs. I've said this many times and I'll keep saying it, well, because I can. It is not a matter of if teams don't work, it is a matter of how soon. And if you're able to get through that with no problems, great for you. When something happens, there are some ideas that I think will be able to help you work through those processes points. I hope everybody is having a good day. I want to use this video to talk about some team building ideas, in part because all of us will deal with circumstances where teams may not fully be on the same page. The best teams are rarely always agreeing on everything. But I also want to give you some larger context as to why teams might be struggling beyond the specific task at hand and what your communication, your outreach, your perspective hopefully can offer to be able to address some of these situations in the short, intermediate, and long term. One of the things people will ask about is, well, why don't people just do their job and why do we even worry about this in the first place? To which I think this study makes a lot of sense from the folks at Big Lots explaining the value of employee feedback. Now, can you listen and do every single thing that's recommended? Of course not. It's impossible. But by simply paying attention, by simply acknowledging that we care enough about you that we want to hear what you have to say, and maybe some of it's good, maybe some of it's not, but we'll at least listen, you're creating two-way communication. And if we're trying to reach people, two-way communication is a really good way to start doing that. And for many, many people, especially those 30 and under, if there's not that two-way communication loop, good luck keeping them around. They're going to go look for someplace else. There's power in creating structure to just listen and understand what's happening. So those surveys, focus groups, meetings that you always probably heard about in the class, yeah, there's value here. We also have to be realistic about the state of mental health. And yes, this is from 2024, but I still think it applies to this day. In short, life is pretty stressful, and many of us have things going on that we don't talk about in public forums or other places, but they certainly impact us. Regardless of generation, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, Gen X, Gen whatever letter you want to include, there are people dealing with work and life stresses and personal stresses, and it all blends together. So, as I'm thinking about team dysfunction, certainly there may be an issue at hand, but there's a likelihood that there is another issue at hand that's going to impact how we want to resolve the situation. Again, the power of listening comes into play here because this allows you to be able to understand what some of these nuances are, where there's connective tissue, and how your work might be able to mind the gap in a very difficult situation. I won't spend a lot of time going over this because you will have access to the PowerPoint, but you will notice this idea of psychological safety and people feeling comfortable in their work environments. Again, 40 years ago, this was a non issue. You just did the work. But as people's faith in families and government and other institutions tends to wane, the emphasis on finding value at work tends to increase. And that means you, even though you are not in the business of trying to deal with psychological safety, have to think about how we reasonably and responsibly can create an environment so people feel comfortable where they are. And if they feel comfortable where they are, guess what? They'll stay. Guess what? They'll do more. Guess what? They'll look for ways to be able to help you, your organization. It truly is a circumstance where everybody can win. I also want to go through the idea of remote work, virtual work, hybrid work, in person work, and all of the challenges that go with that. And many of you may have opinions on this, good, bad, or indifferent, and I will respect those opinions because they're your opinions. But when I'm having conversations about the best way to work and the most efficient way to work, I hope we come to the realization that those criteria are different for everyone. And if we're going to be looking for a workforce that can bring everybody into the equation, there are circumstances where access to remote work is going to be essential. Now, does that mean everybody works from home every single day? No, absolutely not. Does that mean everybody ought to come in one day a week? No, not necessarily. Maybe. It's all different. It's all different. There is no magic way to think about the best ways to create efficiency in an office. I do a lot of work with communicators. We tend to collaborate and brainstorm ideas. Those brainstorms tend to be better when we are in person. But in an era where people are struggling with childcare cost and having nannies call in sick or having sandwich generations with parents, there are variables in place. When we can understand those variables in terms of light, I believe it puts us in a better situation to handle work challenges that may arise because in many cases, it simply isn't about the work. I also believe that if we're really trying to think about creating efficiency within our organization, some of the best managers that we work with don't think about how to write an AP style or how to help people come up with strategies and tactics. It's how do we create space and place for people to be them best selves? How do we create space and pace for people to be their best selves? That is a nuanced challenge. And while I would certainly not put myself in a situation where I would mandate that everyone drinks water when they wake up in the morning, I will tell you, having done it, it works really, really well. And while I would never tell anybody to go ahead and drink a bunch of water before a meeting, I can tell you that when I do it when I wake up in the morning, I feel better. I'm not here to implement regimen. I'm not here to implement structure. I'm not here to tell people what to do when they aren't on the clock at the office. But what I can do through leadership is be able to help people see that there are different tools in the toolboxes and to look for ways to find ways where people can be their best selves. So selfishly, if the idea of being able to do a power walk during the day helps me as an individual, I don't think there's anything wrong with helping other people trying to find their comfort level, understand what works for me. Now, again, what works for me may not work for someone else, but I really appreciate these tools as ways to help others as they may deal with nuances and challenges. And I also think it's important, as strange as this is, to simply reward people for bothering to show up. Now, you might say to yourself, my gosh, it's their job. Why am I thanking people for being there? To which my response would be, think of how many of us have had staffing issues over the past couple of years. Yup. Think about how many of us have had issues at home that have impacted our work. Yup. Think about how many of us have been at in-person meetings where in-person was really important and somebody bothered to zoom in and have their screen and camera off the entire time, probably not paying 1 ounce of attention. Yup. One of the things I think about with leadership and building teams is acknowledgement. Acknowledging the realistic circumstance that has brought us together, acknowledging the effort it takes to get to a location, whether it is in person, whether it is online, whether it is anywhere, and acknowledging that there are other factors in place that may impact performance. It's not an excuse to stink or have a bad day or just quit, but it is, in my estimation, an ability to say, thanks for being here, and also having that follow up where if there are other individuals facing challenges, here are some things we might be able to do to help you be your best self. Finding those solutions and acknowledging people's effort in finding those solutions will allow your teams to do better and to do the proverbial more with less that everyone seems to clamor for in this day and age. One of the challenges I also hear about all the time is trying to help people who might be new to the leadership experience find their form and that criteria that allows a leader to actually be a leader and not just somebody doing 15 people's jobs and sort of watching over everything. Again, you all know how to read, but I do believe this is a fascinating graphic that helps you tackle challenges in a way that is about building people up versus calling people out. Perfection is a myth, mistakes are a given. How we respond to that within our teams is a significant factor in those teams being able to learn, grow, and advance versus butting heads, getting mad at each other, and then watching things go from bad to worse. These phrases you're looking at, I tend to think, help in terms of trying to create and build trust. Will you use all of these in every single conversation? Absolutely not. However, we are in an environment in the workspace where professional relationships and contract vendor relationships are decreasing. In the communication industry, the average agency vendor partnership is 3 years. The likelihood of you turning over points of contact, professional mentors, bosses, the like, that's probably going to happen. My challenge, or maybe my opportunity, is to be able to quickly build trust with words. And I do believe that these words help. But then it's also thinking about how you can create action surrounding those words. When you say consider it done at number 15, and you say that you own this completely, that is a way to make people feel better because you are taking something off of their robust to do list. Now, I have to own it completely. I have to get it done. I have to meet that deadline. As we're thinking about building trust, especially in an era where acceleration is such a factor, these phrases are ways to be able to help create opportunity, help create connective tissue, help create trust. That's part one. Part two, do the job. And there are circumstances and times where we may do the job, but if we don't let people know that we're doing this and why we're doing it, they may not be able to fully notice and appreciate our efforts. I'm not asking any of you to meditate. I'm not asking any of you to meditate. However, I'm a big believer in taking breaks. There are many techniques out there that suggest you've got about 50 minutes of energy before you need a little bit of a refuel. And if there's not a Diet Coke or iced coffee that is available, or if you've just had a really difficult challenge and are looking for a way to get through it, I will tell you, having practiced yoga, and yes, honest to God, I really do practice yoga, looking for ways to give yourself a few moments to reset has incredibly powerful value. Walks matter, short breaks matter. Give yourself space to be your best you. And again, I'll try to say this one more time. We'll see how effective it is. Some of these ideas may not be perfect for you. Probably aren't. It'd be weird to bat 1,000 in a circumstance like this. My hope is as you are looking through these ideas, you see some that might work for you, and maybe other phrases or terms that aren't as impactful, or other things you think you're already doing. All of that is fine. I just want you to have resources so that as you're thinking about building good organizations, you have different tools in the toolbox to reach specific needs at specific moments. For those wanting a resource hack, these are very nice tools that will help you with engagement on any of these fronts, in particular, the idea of getting that two-way communication going, obtaining that kind of feedback. I also would encourage you to think about the notion of AI. The Marketing AI Institute has amazing ideas to help with things like sentiment analysis and being able to understand real motivations that individuals are facing, which they might be experiencing, but maybe they aren't necessarily talking with someone about. And that way you can kind of get underneath the hood of the car without actually getting underneath the hood of the car. Couple more hacks before we go. I really appreciate not just the notion of micro learning and resources that will help you do that, but some books. Maybe you want to read all of them. Maybe you want to read part of them. Maybe you travel and the audio book is your jam. I can tell you from individual experience, having gone through many of these materials, they give you further ideas. Again, you have to be your best you, and some of these tools will work better than others. My hope is that you put yourself in a mindset where you want to learn, grow, and get better. And I think some of those tools can help, along with 24 TED Talks that I will admit I have gone through. And as you are sitting, waiting, instead of just checking your phone or playing solitaire or block blast or whatever, these short and simple videos will give you some ideas on how to take your values and the things that mean most to you, help your team understand them, and be able to create consensus so we can move the ball forward for everyone. Again, it's not comprehensive, and some of these things may not necessarily fit best for you, but I think these resources will give you a start to be able to, one, identify why teams might start to struggle, and two, what you can do to help with a little bit of data there to increase the probability that your efforts will be successful. As always, if there's questions, and there always are, call, email, tweet, do whatever you got to do. Take care of yourselves and have a great day.